Pomari e whakalofa lahi atu. Welcome to Friday Night Live with Talanoa Sa'o. It's my great pleasure to welcome you in. My name is Ali Diki. Without further ado, let me bring in one of my co-hosts. This is Liao Tilsley. Liao, talofa.
Talofa. Elliot, you are on time.
Hoi. Of course.
Hi,
Great to see you, Liao. How's things going?
really well. It's been a good week.
Oh, good.
Excited for
And now, good. Sorry, guys. Looks like Liao's a little bit picky in and out. There's a little internet, some fun stuff as we usually do in Auckland. And welcoming back to the stage, we've got our long lost brother, long lost toko, Uso. That is Fuiawai Lili Ala Lima. Fuiawai, talofa.
Malolava. Ia toi whātalofa tū pa ia mani me malu wa mwhai na whātasi mai le nei afi ia tato pokalame masani lava le nei o le Talanoa Sa'o mo lo ingoa Fuiawai Lili Ala Lima. Welcome everyone, and it's good to be back. How are you guys doing?
Oh, very good. So good to see you, bro. Very good to see you.
Good to see you.
Awesome. So, I think it's going to be a great night, as per always. Look, just for our audience, thank you so much for coming in and joining us. It is really a pleasure to have you here. As per usual, we do love to have you discuss and get engaged in that Talanoa. All right, and tonight is no exception. All right, so if you've got any questions, throw it in there, and we will do our best. We'll do our best to bring that question into play. Now, we have also been asking for you guys to send in some of your questions for tonight's special guest, and those have been coming in. Thank you very much for those. So we do have a bit of a play, but in the meantime, bringing onto the stage now is the man of the hour. We want to just have a real big props up for the man. This is Craig Lord. Whakalofa lahi atu. Welcome to the stage.
Yay! Good evening, everyone.
How are you?
Oh, good evening. Hey, Craig, it's so awesome for you to be here. We thank you so much. We want to start off in the proper way, in the appropriate way that we do in Talanoa Sa'o, and that's with a bit of prayer. So, Fuiawai, do you think you could just start us off with a bit of a prayer for us?
Sure, why not?
Awesome.
Let us pray. Father God, we just want to praise and glorify your wonderful name. We want to say thank you so much for bringing us all together, especially with our special guest, Craig. Lord, we thank you because you were with me during the time that I was away. Thank you for being with those who were on the program constantly, my dear brother Elliot and sister Liao. Lord, I ask that you just bless the audience who have been faithful in listening all these many episodes. And Lord, tonight I just ask for a special blessing on my brother Craig. And I ask that you just allow him to be able to answer all the questions that are going to be given to him tonight. And we just thank you, Lord, for being with us. And we ask this in the mighty name of your Holy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Oh, Leo kept it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And
Maybe rebooting the router, eh?
rebooting the router. All right. So it looks like we've already got some wonderful comments coming in here. We've got Jenny, greetings, beautiful, fierce people. Tina, evening. Oh, Kate's in there. Hi, Kate.
Hi,
Yeah,
Kate.
Kate, thank you. Chase is in there. All right. Oh, Toby's put in a go home if it's all. Okay. Hey, all right. Good overview of Tauranga. Very good. So, we've got a lot of more comments in here. Oi! We've even got a few here for Craig as well. Annette's going in there as well.
Yeah, Annette.
Annette's and Barbara, Craig for
Barbara.
Mayor. Awesome. All right, and you got Mayor. So we've even got some of our people on YouTube even thrown in there as well. Good to see you, Craig. Awesome. Very good. Okay, so we'll wait for until Liao gets in. Craig, could you please start off just by giving us a little bit of an intro to yourself, to our people, those of us who don't know you too well, and just a brief bio, if you could.
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. It's trying to make it brief is the problem. So I moved to Auckland when I was 15 years old. I came up here by myself. I'd applied for a job in the back of the Herald, and in those days there was no internet and no cell phone, so ads were in the Herald. And it was simply saying school leaver wanted for a small engineering workshop. So I rang the phone number. They said, sure, come in for an interview. I said, well, I can't do it today. I'll do it tomorrow. So I hopped on the motorbike rode all the way up to Auckland, found the workshop eventually with a map taped to the fuel tank of my motorbike, paper maps in those days, of course. And they gave me the job that afternoon. So I rang my father and said, I'm leaving home. I'm moving to Auckland. So that's where I've been for 35 years. I stayed with that workshop for 16 years. I ended up being trained as a maintenance and diagnostics engineer, specializing in hydraulic and pneumatic automation. And really the core machinery I used to repair was injection molding machines, factory production lines, things like that, to keep those factory products pumping out all day, every day. That was my main thing. So I did that, and in that time, I met my wife. So I met her when I was, I think I was 17 and she was 15. So I'd only been up here for 2 years. We met then. So that was 30 whatever years ago. We've been married 26 years. Our son is turning 21 next month. Our daughter turns 25 at the end of the year. But I stayed in that's that side of it. But I stayed in the engineering for 16 years. And in that time, they trained me up through all the aspects of business, and including that was stints as the sales manager, workshop manager, and then general manager. They wanted me to buy the company. They offered that. It didn't pan out. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So I left. And, well, yeah, it's an oddball thing to do, but I flicked the switch and I converted myself to being media freelance, chasing motorsport, which is, I mean, from an engineer into motorsport and media, knowing zero about how it worked. I didn't know anything about media contracts, how to get the work, where the work was going to come from. But I had a hobby of photography. I liked writing, and I had a passion for motorsport. So I thought, well, surely I can make all three work together. And I did. And I still have that business today, 20 years later. And 20, whatever it is, it's a while, and I still do motorsport work, amongst other things. So also I've had some really good fun on the microphone at special events. So I've been the MC for some major sporting events like the World Triathlon, International Ironman, World Rowing Cup. I think the biggest one was when I got to be an MC as part of the 2011 Rugby World Cup. That was pretty cool, and I enjoyed that. That was, it's a time you'll never forget. And every time either Tonga or Samoa turned up to play, the party was insane, because there is no party like the Pacifica parties.
There you go.
The Irish were very close. The Irish were close, but not quite when it came to just good times, no matter what the team was doing. So that was a highlight of my broadcasting career. And I've had stints on Radio Sport as a producer and a host, and also on ZB for a little while, doing talkback overnights and on weekends, and short stints on Sky Sport and Prime. But mostly it's all revolved sort of around, my media has revolved around sports, events, motorsport, and just things like that. And I've just kept doing it. So that's basically who I am. Oh, we've got, the 2 dogs and 6 chickens. That's my world.
Oh, lovely. That's really awesome. Awesome. So, okay, obviously we've had people coming out, and I just want to address something that has been brought up, just to let everyone know. There have been a couple of people who are mayoral candidates who have been putting out there that we didn't allow them to come on. Just to let you know, we never heard from those people. We sent out 2 messages and they didn't come back to us. So I see some in there. I just want to put that out there, there was no comms back the other way. We put out the comms, they didn't comms back. So just to let you know that one. Now, Craig, we've had Viv Beck out, we've had Leo Malloy out, we've now come down to the 3, that is yourself, that's Fessel Collins, and of course Wayne Brown. Now there is a big track, and as per usual for a New Zealand environment, there's a hefty push by mainstream media to say that, hey, we tell you what the polls are, therefore you'll follow that way. Now, should we be listening to these polls? Because they seem to go all over the place. Some have you high, some have you low, some have you mid. We don't know. What's up with these polls that you are aware of?
Well, the polls to me are a difficult thing to do. I actually think that polls are bad for democracy, because what happens with a poll is you create a news pattern for the mainstream media. They pick on that number that came from that poll, and they don't research any further. So they don't look at any other candidates. They just pick usually, say, the top five on a poll. And the poll isn't really, even though it's called scientific, but of course they'll say that, and the people who run them, of course, will say that. But at the end of the day, it's not a democratic sort of solution to let the population know who is out there. And excuse me, what they should do is simply do the research themselves and analyze and go, well, what are the policies of these different candidates, and then try and garner from there if they're worth covering or not. And that's a decision they eventually have to make, because they just can't cover everyone. But the problem you've got is it's such a tiny snippet of the population, really small. And we're talking the average polls at the moment of 500 people. They did do a recent 1,000 poll, and that's out of 1.1 million eligible voters. So how do you use that as an accurate tool? You can't. So whilst it's ego boosting to have a good number on the poll, to me, it's not a real position of where the people sit. The other problem you have with polls, and why I say they're undemocratic, is because they create a sheeple effect. So what happens is you put out a poll, and people then try to vote strategically, which is what happened in the general election last time. People sort of analyze the polls and they go, oh, well, then I need to vote here to stop this happening. And it's a strategy. Rather than just saying to themselves, I'll vote for the person I want, or the party I want, or the people I want. They try and play strategy games, and all it does is cause colossal problems. And it's not a true democracy, because what they're doing is they're voting to keep people out rather than vote for the person they really want in, which is what democracy is meant to be. So that's why I have major issues with the polls. And the other issue I have, and I think it's a fair one, is the latest Courier poll was run by a person who endorsed one of the candidates, and that candidate happened to get the highest number. So you've got to scratch your head, you've got to raise eyebrows and question it, and unfortunately that's the way it is. So yeah, that's what the polls do to a campaign for anyone, whether it's central or local. The polls to me are a bit of an issue.
Awesome. So let's get into some of our questions. For Yawai and Liao, I know that you've got questions that from yourselves as well as our people. Do one of you want to start off that little hitter?
Oh, I don't mind. I don't mind asking you the first question.
Go for it.
Can you hear? Okay. So I have a question, and it says here, clearly the lockdowns have negative effects both socially and economically. If we were to have another pandemic, what would you do differently to ensure that we don't repeat the same mistake again?
Okay, that's a reasonably good one, although it does encroach into central government issues, because they are the ones who put on the lockdown. So if they were to, I don't think they would. I think it would be political suicide for another lockdown to happen. But what I would have strongly advocated for if I was mayor during those lockdowns was not to force mandates. I do not believe in mandates. So I would have been making a bit of noise about that rather than just jumping on the political wagon of my puppeteer masters. I would say what I felt. And the other thing is not banning people who weren't vaccinated from council facilities, because to me that was completely unfair. If someone was vaccinated and they had a fear of someone who wasn't vaccinated, to me that doesn't add up. You're vaccinated, what are you scared of? And also, if you don't want to hang out with unvaccinated people, you're welcome to stay at home. And that's basically the message I would have said. It would have upset a lot of people, but I do tend to play a straight bat with my opinion. The councillors may not have agreed with my stance at that, but that's what I believed in. So that's really, as a mayor, probably the only sort of input towards the lockdowns of COVID that any mayor could have, because really they're at the beckoning call of our central government.
That's good. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, nice one. For Yawai, do you have something there?
Malo lava, yeah, Craig. I just wanted to to ask a question regarding any strategy you might have in terms of dealing with the Pacifica vote, because as you know, Official Collins is running against. Well, he's not running against you. He's running for mayor as well. And although he lives out in West Auckland, I met him the other day over at the Mangere Market, and and I spoke with him. Um, Basically, I shared with him my concerns regarding his stance, well, his party's stance on certain issues, and how it would be difficult for me to actually support him in that. But I wanted to ask you if you have any plans to try to reach out to people in the Pacific community, and if
Mm.
so, what is your strategy?
Look, it's been incredibly difficult because to target, who do you target and who do you go visit? And given that there's markets across the Auckland region every weekend, it's a pick and choose. So what I've done is, instead of targeting specific groups inside Auckland, because my policies are very um, uh, equitable, they're for everybody. My policies actually are for the good of every citizen of the city. I haven't particularly targeted any group for the votes. Doesn't mean I couldn't. And hey, if you want to, let's see, what's tomorrow, Saturday morning. I'm quite happy to turn up to the markets with one of you tomorrow morning if you want. I'll be there and I'll walk beside you. But no, I haven't done it like that because, again, my policies are for everyone. And I've wanted to share that with as many people as I could across the Auckland Isthmus, which is it's not easy to do. It takes some getting around. But hey, I'm there tomorrow morning if you want me there.
Oi, 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 oi.
There's a challenge for you, though.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay, Craig, I do have one that was given to me by a lot of our audience, and that is we're facing unprecedented levels, and it is unprecedented levels of skyrocketing ram raids, gang violence, gang numbers, drug crime, violent crime, sexual assaults across the Auckland city, and that is actually across even even like Red Beach had some issues going on there the other day I was reading, but so crime is a big one. It is a massive issue currently, and we know that that it's mostly from those young people, or at least the increase is very specifically from the young people elements. We do know, of course, that there is connections with the adult gangs. That aside, how would you, as mayor, confront those levels of crime, and how would you help to bring them down?
Okay, well, first of all, the council is not a security firm, and that needs to be said very clearly. The council's role is to provide core services to make the city function and allow the citizens to get around the city and use the city for their livelihoods. The central government, it's their role to police and prevent crime for whatever aspect they can do it from. Now, that's a social issue. And as you explained in the question, crime is a social issue. It's not a machine or anything. It's a social thing. So, where can council help? Well, first, it's got to be very, very loud at government. It's got to lobby, it's got to advocate, and it's got to make a heck of a lot of noise. And I've heard nothing from our current mayor about this. And there should be a press conferences every week. There should be press releases going out. And the mayor should be chastising the government, saying, you are not doing your job. But that won't happen under the Phil Goff regime. And I know it won't happen under the Efeso regime, because if Labour stay in power, Efeso will have to adhere to them, and he won't go against it. So I will, and I'll make a heck. Look, my wife will admit I'm a very annoying person, and I will be annoying to government. They will be, oh, here he goes ringing again. The advantage you have as the Mayor of Auckland, it's an incredibly powerful office. They can't ignore the phone calls and the emails and the communication. If any of us were to try and get hold of the government ministers or the government itself, we'd have no chance. We'd get fobbed off all the time. But as mayor, I can do it for the people. So that's the first part of it. But what can council do inside its own city? It's a good question. A lot of crime is happening because kids are bored and they're looking for a different lifestyle. We all know that poverty is the major cause. Housing is a problem because that's a cause of poverty as well, but the council can only do so much in regards to housing. But what it can do is try its best to provide a particular core service, which is its duty, to the community, which is the facilities, sports and recreation, things to do, things to keep our youth entertained as long as they're within the council purview and budgets. And that's up to the community quite often to come back to council through the local boards or specific community groups and saying, we don't have basketball courts in our area. Now let's pick on South Auckland, for example, just as one example. But it's the same west, it's the same north. It's limited in what there is. There should be basketball courts everywhere. There should be skateboard parks. There should be playgrounds for the really young, of course, but they're not the ones in the crime problem at the moment. And the sporting facilities should be available because sport keeps you out of court, well, most of the time. So we've got to improve what we do with working with those sporting groups. And that's where the council can come into play. But to me, that's the limit of its social side. Because again, to me, government is meant to be our social provider and our services provider of police, fire, schools, ambulance and hospitals. And so that's their job, that's government's job. And if government aren't providing it, if government isn't doing their job, council should be saying to the government, why not? Do your job. You're meant to be providing for our citizens, the Aucklanders. So that's really where I'm at with it. In regards to businesses, though, businesses can obviously do their own security, and they should be looking after their council shouldn't be paying for any security for a business because that's not fair. Because who do you choose where you give money to beef up their business? So you can't do that. But what you can do is speed up the process for any business that wants to look at security that requires consents. That could be bollards. There's a perfect example. So if a store wanted to put bollards in front of its shop, it can't just do it. It's got to ask for permission. It's got to find out where it can do, what it can do, how it can do it. A lot of that is Auckland Transport because it's the footpath and the roading. But what council should be doing is as soon as a shop gets in touch, there should be a department there for security right now, and the shop gets in hold of them and they go, we're on our way. They go out there and they immediately say to the shop, yes, you can, here's the plans, you can put a bollard on the street here, you're not going to cause problems for delivery, for access of disabled, for other functions, you can do it there, there's no underground services, you're fine, you're not going to rupture a gas line or the fibre for the internet. Look, here's the fee for our time, $200, not thousands, go for it. But these are the spec, you can't change it from the spec, here's what you can do outside your store, in this suburb, on this footpath, for this particular shop. The problem is all shops will be different, and underground will be different, and the requirements of access will be different. But there is, just for me to end it, another issue that people have to be aware of for shops. If they want to put bollards in, and they dig up the footpath and they put in bollards, if something has to be worked on for the street, and those bollards have to be ripped up, who pays for it to be reinstated? So there's lots of things to think about, especially if it's thousands and thousands of dollars, and the council has to put in a new water main or something, and they've got to rip the bollards up. Well, now the big question is, who's paying for that? So there's a few things to do, but I hope it was a long-winded question, but it's a long answer, but I hope it explained my position on it.
No, that's good. And actually, I want to say that's actually a fair question, because I have heard from a couple of the other mayoral candidates who throw out these wild claims that they'll be able to fix elements of the social structure that does foundation of the crime. So I like that you actually put that line in there and say, well, that's actually not our job, because you're right, that is not your job. And when we look overseas as well as in New Zealand data, it really isn't. It's not the job of the local council, but those who actually have the laws of the social effects on the family and the economy around it. So no, well said.
Even community groups, like local community groups might want to look after their own youth and run youth programs and stuff. That's not actually a council role either. That's the community doing what they should be doing as a community. They're a family, and that's their job. Now, the council could help out and say, well, look, you haven't got a really good hall out this area, so we have to look at providing a council facility for you to use, or a hall, or we can help you out, That sort of thing is what the council can do.
So sorry, guys, just to pierce on that a little bit. If you were the mayor, would you make it a little bit easier? So currently, for example, the council venues are half price, half cost if you are engaging in a political discourse or discussion. Would you make it a little bit easier in the same type of area for a council-owned venue to be utilised for perhaps something which is youth-based or something which is able to be identified as a prevention or intervention method for the reduction in crime?
Yes, 100%. That's what the council should be doing. That they can step in and help with. If a community group wants to use a community hall and the community hall says, "Oh, look, it's $500 to rent it for the day," and the community group goes, "Well, come on, we're trying to help out the kids here. We don't have that money." The council should be going, "Actually, I see what you're doing here. You're right. Put a line through it. There's no fee. Let's get on with it. Use the hall."
Okay.
So
awesome.
There's certain caveats and exemptions that should be in place for things like that. Yeah.
No, awesome. Thank you very much, Liao.
I have another couple of questions, but I'll just ask this one. How will Auckland City get out of debt left behind by the previous mayor?
Well, the debt itself, left behind by the previous mayor. Look, it's a massive debt, and it's only going to go up at the moment. The CRL, that's Central Rail Link, is going to increase it, and so will some other infrastructure projects. The thankful part of it is that we have a very good debt rating with Standard & Poor's. So that's a phew. Thank goodness we've got that. If we're not in trouble. What we've got to do is, like any household budget or even any business budget, if you know you've got a debt, you go, how am I going to service this debt? I need more income or less expenditure. So for me, I'm going for the less expenditure route. That's my first point of call. So I want to change and overhaul the way council spends its money. And I've got various ways that I want to achieve that. There are big ticket items, and to be fair, Desley Simpson, the councillor, and her finance committee have done a very good job with some of the big ticket items, reducing the money down. And I think so far they've saved about $2.4 billion on expenditure, that is fantastic and should be applauded. But speaking with her about this a couple of times, she said there's a lot more that can be done. And that was heartening for me. That's like, yes, if we can do that, if we can save hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, then we can service that debt and start to bring it down. And we've just got to be in the future a lot smarter about how we do projects so we don't have to borrow so much for the future. Because, look, let me delve into one of those just quickly. So I want to overhaul the preferred contractor system. And the preferred contractor system is where we hemorrhage so much money. That is the function of the city to keep it maintained and keep it operating, is using those contractors. We've got to change the way that works so we're not shelling out millions and millions and millions of dollars for projects that should only be $100,000, or where we're shelling out $1 million for a project that should be $100,000, or even $50,000 for a $10,000 job. When you add all those up, when you take in the really old adage of, if you look after the pennies, the pounds take care of themselves, if you bring that into play, suddenly we change the way the budget works inside council. So that's what I'm about. I'm about pulling the purse strings in, focusing on the necessities, not the niceties, making sure we are legitimate in our costings and that we're not getting rorted and ripped off in our projects, and focusing on the expenditure rather than the income, so that we can get that debt down. And let's get that debt under control, because it is in the tens of millions and it's got to come down. But yeah, again, it's we're currently okay, but we're on the cusp.
Yep. No, awesome. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, great one. Fuiawa, did you have something there?
Yeah, once again, I'm just speaking from the perspective of someone from the Pacific community. And the reason why I want to address this is because, of course, this is a program that is called Talanoa Sa'o. And we'll be talking about issues, or we should have issues that have more to do with our community than you would find in other talk shows
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
web podcasts that you might actually come across. So one thing I wanted to say is that I've come across this information that talked about the fact that the second most spoken language here in Auckland happens to be Samoan, and this is the only place in the entire country where it's like that, because everywhere else in the country, the first language is English, and the second language is Te Reo, Maori. But in Auckland, the second most spoken language happens to be Samoan. The third most spoken language is Te Reo, Maori, and it's only in Auckland. So, coming from that perspective, I wanted to. I've heard what you've had to say about different ways of dealing with issues that were probably brought about because of former administrations. One of those things that have a really big impact on the Pacific community is that of welfare. Uh, the law of unintended consequences. Uh, this these prior administrations felt like the way to solve so many problems was throwing money at the problem, and then trying to make use that money and trying to resolve whatever the problems were. And the unintended consequence was actually creating a larger welfare system where people were actually dependent on the government. And so, because we've created that as an issue, and it's a really big issue here in the Pacific community, I'm wondering if you have a way of resolving that. If you've got like some way of taking steps toward trying to resolve this particular problem within the not just the Pacific community, but other communities as well. But because of the fact that there's so many in number here, this is why I'm bringing it up.
Awesome. Welfare dependency.
Yes.
Oh, 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 your question was too scary.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
There we go. Wow. In fact, the phone is meant to silence phone calls, but it obviously didn't there. Okay. That's an interesting one. We have turned ourselves into a welfare state, but New Zealand is meant to be a welfare state, but welfare dependency, and that's a major problem. That really again comes from, I think, poor social issues from the government. They haven't done it right. That argument will go on forever between the different parties. And what can be done? Well, probably from a council point of view, probably not a lot, which is, and it's not a question I've ever had before, so I'm trying to think on the fly here. But I'm not sure the council can do anything. The only thing straight away I could suggest that might help that rut of welfare dependency and the possibility of turning it around over time is the local contractor system that I'm proposing. And the reason I say that is I was at a debate at Waitea Marae, and one of the questions was the big contractors get all the work and our small business, and he said Pacifica and Māori businesses, we're getting none of that. And that was great to my ears, because I said, well, have I got the policy for you? And this could be it as well, because by overhauling the preferred contractor system, this will allow local businesses to work local. And now local businesses can get themselves into the system. And so now they'll need more workers and they'll need more staff. And so they'll be advertising, hey, we need people who want to do it. And it could be from the most simplistic tasks of beach cleaning or park maintenance, public facility maintenance, whatever the role is that the council requires in that area, we'll find local contractors who can do it. And there'll be businesses And his ears pricked up at that meeting. He goes, yeah. I said, well, there'll be businesses who might only be a 1 or 2 person operation, and they'll be going, well, hang on, if I can get this council work and I can look after my own region, and let's just say Otara for the want of a suburb, these contractors can go, well, we know how to do concrete work, we know how to repair fences, we know how to do plumbing, we've got electricians, we've got roofers, we've got all this. We can create a company and we can put in a proposal and we can be in the contract system, and now we're working for the council. So the council's creating jobs. If we create jobs, we're starting to get rid of that welfare dependency mentality. I mean, it's not the overall fix, because it's not like we're going to create tens of thousands of jobs. But if we can start it and get the process rolling and be a part of it, then I'd be happy to do that. And one of the aspects that really makes me excited about having local contractors working local is the pride. Because if a local contractor is repairing their own area, they're going to have a huge amount of pride in their work, and they're going to want to go to work, and they're going to want to serve the community, and they're going to want to get more work because they know they've done a good job in the previous task they were given. So to me, it's a really cool snowball effect. It grows everything, and then hopefully other businesses will go, well, actually, I want a piece of that pie. I'm going to set up as well, and I'm going to put up my hand. And you could end up with, like, who cares if we end up with 50 businesses or 50 companies who have started up to work for the council as their own little entity, because now they might be able to pick up other business as well, because we've helped them grow. And there's all these little side aspects to it that for me are kind of exciting. But to answer that question, that's probably about the limit of where council could get involved with the welfare dependency. But on your first point about the languages, I'm actually surprised that the Asian languages aren't up there amongst that, but that could be because there's so many of them that it splits that percentage of being the most spoken language in Auckland. I'm sure.
Yeah, I thought Cantonese was up there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised. But anyway, I don't know if that fully answered the question or satisfied you, but that's really off the fly what I can offer.
Awesome. No, thank you very much for that. Okay, so I want to bring up a couple of comments here that have been brought up for the question that I've been asked to send along. That is this one from ABCZX1. Cycleways, wee-hee! Alright, so we've got Cycleways there, and then down along here we've also got Amanda. She is talking about what will happen to Hill Street in Warkworth. I think most of us do know. I'm assuming she means the one that goes down the hill and up, and then any type of any day off, it turns into this massive snake of, yeah, okay, I think we all know what we're talking about there. Okay, good. So Craig, that and also, even on that, I'd like your take on traffic overall. How do we prevent it? Are these bus lanes the funded or the ratepayer funded public transport, the CRL, the light rail, that big fat fish?
Okay, the fat fish. Right, we'll start with cycleways. So cycleways can be a good thing. I got no problem with cycleways, but they're putting them in the wrong place and they're putting them in too expensive. So a lot of the times they're putting in cycleways that are just not being used, and the rhetoric and the narrative is, if we build it, they'll get used. Well, unfortunately, that's already proving to be incorrect. So there's an ideology that's not quite adding up there. The Aucklanders, cycles are less than 1% of Auckland. They're a very loud minority, and they're welcome to ride a push bike. I've got no problem with that. And I do feel for I think we've had 2 cyclists who have been killed very recently, and that's an absolute tragedy. But people, you can't protect everyone with everything all the time, sadly. We'd love to, but we can't do that. A lot of these cycleways are proving to be a bit nonsensical. I would like to have them a bit smarter, and there's a lot of places where footpaths are actually adequate for cycle lanes. And what frustrates me is Tamaki Drive, for example, where they have used half the footpath for cycle lanes, and you go there and the cyclists are in the middle of the road lane because they don't want to use the cycle lane. And so that frustrates me, and it probably frustrates the majority of Aucklanders as well, that you provide them with something and they won't use it. and then if you don't provide them, they moan about it. So, in regards to have we got the quota just right? No, we've kind of, there's no problem with more cycle lanes, just not on the main arterials. That's where I find it to be quite an issue. Hill Street, yeah, 100%. That has, what a nightmare. And I think as far as I'm aware, the government or NZTA have said, yep, we're on it. We're back in planning mode. So I'm going to chase it up. It has to be pushed. There's about 5 on my list. There's Mill Road as well in the Bombay Hills, particularly with the bridge and the BP, the gas stations, the off ramps, on ramps. There's Glenvar Road up in North Shore. That's an absolute disaster. I was going to say it's an accident waiting to happen, but accidents happen and they keep putting it off. So there's some roading projects that are a must. The Hill Street one in Warkworth, that slows up almost the nation. It's ridiculous that wasn't prioritised. Instead, they're putting priority on putting a light rail down Dominion Road. I just don't understand the mentality when all those billions are there. They're saying the money is there. Well, get into Hill Road and sort it out now. Do that. That's way more important. But unfortunately, the ideology of those on the left at the moment is no. We don't focus on roads. We focus on cycle lanes and on trams. And then going into your one about public transport, and I assume road congestion was what you were speaking of. So I've got a major problem with what NZTA and Auckland Transport are doing. They are creating congestion on purpose. I find that to be abhorrent. I think it's
oh, that's right. Yes, of course.
Yeah, it's disgraceful what they are doing. They are taking away free left turns. They are putting in speed humps where they don't belong. I've got no problem with speed humps in certain areas. They do work for safety when required, but when they're purely there just to frustrate and slow down traffic for no reason, that's where I have a major issue. They have put in traffic islands to reduce multiple lanes down into dual or single lanes, then open them back up again. They're putting in anything they can to restrict traffic, and they're doing it on purpose, and it's to cause congestion. They've admitted it. The cycle advocates have admitted it. Greater Auckland, who is a cycle activist, public transport activist, he's admitted that's what they are doing on purpose. And thankfully, Ludo Campbell-Reid, who no longer is part of Auckland Council, he's over destroying Melbourne now, he admitted it as well, that he said if what you do for social engineering is you don't hit people with everything at once, because then they will fight against you and rally against you. What you do is you take away what people want and put in what you want, little bits at a time. They might complain about it for a little while. You can tell them it's a trial, but after a while they forget about it and they just carry on and put up with it. That's the admittance that was done, and that they have to be kicked to touch. Anyone with that kind of mentality in Auckland Transport, and there's a lot of them, need to go. Thankfully, there are tools to do that. The Mayor has the power with the committees that under the council table to actually fire the Auckland Transport Board. They have the power, the Mayor has the power to create the statement of intent with that committee and the councillors. They have a review of the CEO, and they have the power in legislation, which I've been reading up on, and it's not easy, but it's there. They have the power to control what the CCOs, of which Auckland Transport is one of them, actually do, their job. They have the power to do that. This current mayor doesn't do it. That particular committee is called the Appointments Performance Review Committee. They have the power over the CCOs. It's chaired by Mayor Goff. It has 6 of his left-leaning minion councillors on there, and poor old Christine Fletcher is left on her own as the deputy chair with no power, basically. And also Phil Goff took 2 councillors off Auckland Transport's board. They had voting rights. He removed them. I'll be putting them back on, and I'll be changing that committee to be councillors, and I don't care if they're from the left or the right, but they'll be councillors after an interview with me that I am sure they have the best interests of Aucklanders in their hearts and minds. That's how they will get on that committee, and that they understand that what they are doing to Auckland, slowing Auckland down, is a hindrance. It is causing congestion. It's causing emissions. it's causing costs to businesses. It has to be removed. Finally, on the buses, the biggest problem we have in Auckland, in my opinion, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, but in my opinion, Auckland topography, the layout of Auckland, and the way that it's been designed across the suburbs for the last 180 years, how we've built it, does not lend itself to public transport. Mayor Robbie tried to get it to happen in the 70s. He got shot down, and unfortunately, because he had the right ideas back then, and now it's too late. To put in effective public transport, and I'll get to that little point shortly, there's only 3 options. The first option will never happen because we cannot afford it, and I just don't think it's feasible, is tunneling suburbs, subways, everywhere. It'll never happen. The second option, and I hope this doesn't happen as well, is to enforce a scorched earth policy, to bring in an effective loop system where public mass transport is available to everyone effectively and efficiently. You've got to remove so many houses and buildings around Auckland to put it in that is not feasible either. The third option, which I think is feasible with the modern technology that's available, is go above ground. It gets laughed at and scoffed at a little bit, but I think people need to realize that it works overseas, and possibly it's something we should be looking at here out of the box. We go up with the big pylons, and we have an above ground loop system, which then we can put it anywhere. We can put it down the side or center of a motorway. We can run it above suburbs. We can go across the hilly terrain with a nice flat system. Have these depots everywhere.
The underrail monorail.
It's a similar system, but that's really old school. They're electric now. They're pneumatic. They're magnetic. There's all sorts of designs.
No, I love them. I think that is the greatest idea, and that the budget fixes it.
One of the really cool things I saw overseas was they use parking towers for car parking, and that train goes into it in an upper level. And there's lifts, so it's for the disabled, the cyclists, they can ride to it, the disabled can park right there, they can jump on the lift, go to the level of the train, and hop on that train and go to where you want to go, and then come back to your car later. It's right there, and it's part of the tower, it's part of the system. So it exists, we just are not broad enough in our thinking for that. So that's the thing. And just the last little bit on transport, and I'm going to pick on Efeso here because his major policy, and I'm surprised this is a major policy, is fares free. There is no such thing as free. We are all going to be paying for it one way or the other. He has said he isn't sure where the money's going to come from, and it's anywhere from $250 to $500 million per year. At this stage, he's saying, I'm going to take money from one of the other budgets. Well, what's going to happen to whatever budget that was for? And it's just taking out of one pocket and putting in another. And to me, that's not right. And if he can't do that, the only other way he can follow through with his promise is to up the rates to cover that with a targeted system. So I do not agree with free fares in an aspect there. However, I don't mind having a subsidy, and I'm pretty sure the population wouldn't mind either, subsidizing the elderly, the card holders who need it, helping the disabled, students, obviously. There's places for that, and the population could be, yeah, we're for that, but everybody and anybody, that doesn't fly with me. And the survey I did, and everyone pulls up their surveys, but the survey I did of 1,200, I think it was only around 200 people said they'd be interested in a reduced priced fare, but that wasn't the reason they don't take public transport. The reason is it's ineffective and it's inefficient. That was the reason.
Awesome. Oh no, look, thank you so much for that. I think that's some really great stuff. And just to let you know, for our audience out there, just to let you know, what Craig was talking about earlier on was that it was advised, it wasn't even admitted, it was advised that the New Zealand traffic management, the overall management system for Auckland traffic, is to make it harder to travel. They admitted this. They stated it very clearly, that their job, that they actually were on purpose slowing us down. They were on purpose jamming up the traffic. This is not some out there. And I was listening to several interviews on ZB. It was it was shocking to hear them actually be very clean about it. That is exactly what they're doing. So yeah, look, thank you so much for that. I think that's some great stuff there. Liao, what question do you have for us?
Craig, it's been so good to hear. I just have one of my own because I know for a fact that in town with the homelessness, that they're still paying what $1 million a day to house them in these. You look at that and you go, what an incredible waste of money that they have not even, Carmel Sepuloni, social development, have not even addressed, you as the mayor will be able to take back what actually belongs to our city and to start, well, you have the power to be able to go, okay, we need to address this because all we're doing is hiding problems. We're not actually dealing with them with any scope of imagination that we're spending this much money. It's like turning on the tap of all of our rates and letting them just drain out.
Yeah. I'm not an expert on the homeless or the social services side of things. So one of the actual jobs of a mayor, because then the mayor isn't the boss, the mayor's a leader, is to have a team around you. So I'm going to have to get in the experts who know about the homeless, who live and breathe it every day. And I need those people around me to guide me on what to do. In regards, though, to how the government have handled it, yes, that's again the lobbying job, the advocating job of a mayor to council and say, to government to say, sorry, but you're actually causing problems in our city, and we're going to have to correct these now because we've got to put our foot down and do that. What they've done with the emergency housing down in the CBD is a disaster, and it is, as you say, it's out of sight, out of mind to them. I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago, and one of the big problems we've got is where do they go? And wherever they are housed, there's going to be issues. So that's a major discussion that has to happen in the communities because, well, you know what is going to happen if a Kainga Ora division is created somewhere, wherever's next door are going to be saying, I don't want that. It's the ultimate NIMBY, isn't it? Not in my backyard. Arguably, they can do that. They can say, I don't want it, and the fights are going to start. So there's a lot to pick through on it. But yes, they have caused major problems in the CBD, and they do need to be solved. And I will be working extremely hard to do so because one of the reasons is I want to completely refresh the CBD, and I've got I don't know if it's a wild idea or whether it's a mishmash of lots of people's different ideas, but I think we need to flick the switch, call it a CCD, so it's a central civic district, not a business district. Whilst there are businesses that do have to stay together, say lawyers, finance firms, accountants, banks, those sort of things, they need that direct interaction. They don't actually use a lot of paperwork anymore, but it's that direct interaction. A lot of the businesses proved during COVID that they don't need to be in the CBD. They can operate in satellite offices anywhere. They can set up anywhere around Auckland City. So we'll then have empty retail and empty business. So what do you do with the CBD? We turn it into the CCD, and you turn it into a family-centric park. The whole lower Queen Street, that area down by the silos, the waterfront, forget about the ports, let the ports be the ports, but all that other area, you turn it into something special, a destination, because that is what Queen Street used to be. 20 plus years ago, before, well, maybe slightly more, but still even 20 plus years ago, Queen Street was, oh, let's go shopping. Where should we go? We'll go to Queen Street. It was an adventure. It was something to do. Now it's, oh, do you want to go somewhere different? We'll go to Albany. Oh, no, we'll go to St. Luke's. Oh, how about we go to Botany? Now it's the malls are our destination for shopping. So you don't shop in the Queen Street anymore. So you've got to do something else with it. I think apartment buildings are a great idea, and the council has to help the building owners with a quick fire way of turning their old retail stores and their businesses into apartment blocks for accommodation. And the students will use them. People will flock to go, bulk. They love that. It's a lot of people who love that idea. especially suddenly if we've got a pedestrianised Lower Queen Street, because you don't need your car because you're not going shopping there. You have the shops that the malls don't have. You still need the shops to service that community that live there by default, but they've just built a brand new mall down the bottom of Queen Street anyway. So you still need the convenience stores and clothing stores and a few retail. But imagine the shops you don't have, those boutique shops, the specialist shops that have cool things and art and just stuff that you don't regularly get. And you have more cafes and restaurants and you could have museums and just the things for kids to do. And you turn it into something different. Then suddenly we've got a different CBD. But it's that homeless one that you were talking about at the very beginning. How do we remove them from there? That's a big problem that I do not have an answer for, and I need that help. So when I'm mayor, if any of the listeners here are specialists in dealing with that social side of life, you have to get hold of me. You have to get in touch because I'll need you on the team. That's the only way we're going to do this, and it's going to take more than
we might know someone.
Experts. Yep, it's going to take a handful of people who have to get in there and say, "I'm in. How can I help you?" And that's what we've got to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Fuiamo, we've got a few questions. We've got only about 4 questions left, but
okay, I'll try.
Thank you so much, Craig.
As well.
Yeah, you're good.
You're doing really well, Craig.
You're doing well. You're doing well.
Thanks for answering the question so far, Craig. Great job, as these guys have said. Going to continue with the Pacific theme. The reason why I'm bringing these things up is because I'm very familiar with these things, being as I'm based here, and I also ran for a representative in this area. So one of the biggest problems that we have in Pacifica in the community happens to be gambling. And because of the gambling problems that the people in the Pacifica community have, they've come to the realization that the gambling industry is making so much money from low socioeconomic people, low socioeconomic communities, specifically in the areas of Papatoe, Otara, Oahu, and parts of Manukau. You'll find the main thing is it's not the casinos for them, it's actually pokie machines that are in each of these different establishments, almost on in every corner. And the thing that I guess I'm bringing this up right now, just because it's a 2-part of my question. The first thing I wanted to say is if you were aware of this, and you were talking about trying to get money into the communities, and you talked about like your solution that you had brought up, and I think that's a great idea, hiring jobs within the community. I wanted to just bring up the first thing, if you were aware of this issue, what your solution would be regarding that. The second thing would be people are complaining in the Pacific community because what's happening is that they especially here in the South Auckland, because they don't feel like they're getting the kind of financial assistance from the government that they were receiving prior to Auckland becoming a super city. And so I'm just wondering if we're talking about bringing money back into the community.
Yes.
If you were to split South Auckland away from this major area, because one of the things that we're finding inside the problem gambling thing is that all this money is being spent by these people. Statistics show that Pacifica and Maori are like the number 1, number 2 in population size regarding gambling. Yes. And so they spend all this money that they don't have.
Yes.
And then what happens is that money, because it's a super city, that money gets put into a pot that goes to like another area.
Yes.
Like Wemwera, for example, or some of those other areas. And meantime, this money came out of this small community over here, but it's not being used within that community. It's being taken to another part of Auckland. And that's because the problem that we're talking about regarding a super city as opposed to just it being like Manukau or something like that, the way it used to be.
I know what you're getting at here. So,
Awesome.
first of all, the pokies. I think gambling is a terrible drug. It's a disease, and I despise it. I don't even do anything a tipple on the TAB. I just think it's a terrible thing. The pokies, if I have the power to do so, I'm not sure that I would. I would remove them. I just think they're a blight on society. Now, what they do is they say, these people who run them, oh, but we give back to the community. We put the money into sports, and if it wasn't for us, that team wouldn't have a uniform, or if it wasn't for us, they wouldn't have a new set of nets for their basketball court, or things like that. They wouldn't be able to get. We help to send them to Waikato to take on another team. They do this kind of stuff. So it's like the licensing trusts with alcohol. They do the same thing. They market themselves very cleverly to the community, saying, look, we're going to give you a free fire extinguisher, and we're going to give you a free first aid kit and a smoke alarm. Look at us. How wonderful are we? Just keep buying alcohol from our stores, and we'll do this for the community. It's a rort, and they're making a lot of money in the background, and people are suffering. So, yes, I despise the pokies. I don't know if I've got the power to remove them. I do know it's a major problem, and we need to reduce them dramatically for the better of society. And I will be, because I know it exists, I'll be certainly knocking on the doors inside council to find out what we can and can't do. So definitely I'll be looking at that. In regards to what I think you were getting at is equity, which is more the return on the rates. And that is a major problem. And that can be seen instantly when you drive through South Auckland and you look at their playgrounds. And you go, hang on a second, why is this a $5,000 playground and there's a $200,000 one in Remuera or somewhere else? The argument from those areas are they'll say, but we pay more in rates, so we should have more in our area. Well, yeah, it's an argument. It's an argument. But I don't think, even though we shouldn't be, say, taking all the money out of Oraki or wherever and putting it somewhere else, because it's their money in their region, I think it needs to be looked at, is it, what you're saying, going fairly back to the community? Rodney District and Franklin District are pure examples of that. They pay so much in rates with their rural properties. They don't get the services that we do in urban. So they're paying for things that they're not receiving. And it is the same, yes, in South Auckland and certainly way out west as well. They pay rates. And when you look at what they're getting, I think it's Herald Island. They don't even have footpaths. You know? And they're paying rates. It's like, come on, what's going on here? So I think we need to rethink the way it's worked. One of the things I'm very strong on is reworking the equation for rates, but that's another issue. I want to get some really smart accountants in to come up with better ideas on how we can fairly charge people the rates on their property, because it's made up of those of the uniform rate which everyone pays per property, and then your general rate, and then your targeted rate for certain things. But it needs a recalculation because it just doesn't seem right, and I'll need the financial gurus to come up with that. But we've got to get equity back into play. So we'll put in the simple numbers. If South Auckland's producing $100 million, then they should be getting $100 million, or at least 80 or 90 million, knowing that, yeah, they have to pay their share for other stuff as well, like everybody does. That might not be the exact percentages, but you get what I'm saying here. It's just a fairness thing, and you're right. The super city, excuse me, the super city has created a problem. I'm going to pop a cough lozenge while I'm talking, because
good on you.
2 months of talking. But equity is not equity at the moment.
Craig, I think that's actually a really good comment. So I'll chat while you're coughing. Cough. You know, sometimes you've got to cough to get it out, so it's all good hood. It is quite interesting how you talk about the rates, because I think, you know, when the landlords get pumped themselves, they get regulated, and then their costs go up. I think it absolutely makes sense for them to pass on those increases to those who they rent to. I think it's I think it's unfair that they've got that, right? But it is a brutal type of fairness that they pass on that to those who are renting. It's a horrible
Yeah.
sort of system, and obviously that goes all the way again back to national government. The
Yeah.
And then, of course, then you've got that argument which says, well, this group, this region over here collects more of the rates, but in actual fact, it's actually coming a bit more dispersed evenly because of the fact that those costs have been passed on to that other region. So I think you're right. The equation needs to be looked at. I remember seeing the equation some years ago, and it hurt my head. The equation is fascinating just to look at. It's quite fascinating.
The way they do it, yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So I've actually got a couple of questions, but one of them is a follow up to Fuiawai's question, and that one that you were answering. That is, can we bring down rates? How do we slow rates? I know you said early on, about expenditure. Maybe if you could help us sort of help what that means. Tomatoes cost something like 3 times the amount. Fuel's up, taxes are up, everything's up, and on top of that, some of us are getting $300-400 extra paying out for our rates, and we know that that's going to pump up, and it hurts. It hurts us emotionally, mentally, as well as economically. So we know that that's quite brutal. That one, and I'll wait for that one, and then I'll give you the other one that I've been asked to ask you.
Okay. Rates will never ever. Well, no, that's wrong. Rates can come down because some people in this latest rates change actually reduced because of the calculation, not because of less expenditure or less income needed. It was purely they changed the calculation, and I want to look at it. The cost of living crisis is not in council's hands. That is definitely government.
Yep.
The council doesn't determine the price of a bottle of milk or a block of cheese. And even I sit here with the wife and say, well, shall we buy cheese in this shopping trip, or are we going to leave it? Because, oh my God, we can go a couple of weeks without a block of cheese. We'll just do something else. And that's unfortunately not a council purview. So it is a rates thing because that's the expenses. It's a matter of expenditure. So here's an example. It's only one. In Welsford, they've just finished, or they're just about to finish fully commissioning a brand new public toilet, paid for by council, or technically paid for by the ratepayer. It costs $1.3 million to put in a public toilet. $1.3 million. That's insane. It's a public toilet. It's not 2 houses. So that's expenditure that shouldn't have happened. To me, that's a couple of $100,000. So that should have saved $1 million straight away. That's the expenditure. There was another example was a footpath was put into a park on the North Shore back in 2019. It was $5 million for a couple of 100 meters of concrete footpath. And the excuse they used was, well, there was geotech we had to do. We had to survey the ground. We had to make it safe. We had to do some engineering. Excuse me, it's a concrete path. Sorry, but no, that's not happening. That's expenditure, and we've got to bring that under control. Another wonderful example is in the contract system. You, the ratepayer, paid a glazier from Pukekohe to repair a council window in Warkworth. So you paid this contractor to drive right across Auckland to fix a piece of glass. That's expenditure. We've got to pull that down. And I want to go right into it, though. Because inside council, I want someone to be going through like they would their own business. And they look at it and they're going, where are we wasting money in the company? Not externally with contracts and maintenance, but in the company itself. Where are we bleeding money? Is it with our throwaway items, with supplies? Is it what consumables are we going through here that's costing us millions of dollars a year? That's expenditure. We've got to bring all those things under control, tiny bit by tiny bit. Look after the pennies, pounds take care of themselves. It's simple budgeting for any household. And my final example on that is, if you've got a 32-inch TV hanging on your wall and it works, but you think, I'd really like a 70-inch QLED TV. the budget's not quite there, but I can go borrow some money and do it. No, you don't do it, because the 32-inch TV is doing the job. So that's the difference between nicety and necessity. That's wants and needs. You don't need it, you want it. It's the same in your house, and all of us live like that every day. We analyze, we go, do we need it or do we just want it? And that's what determines what you spend. To me, council's got to have that same mentality, and you make that change from the top. So to make change, you lead with standards you would expect. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a sports team. If you want to change it, the coach has to lead with the standards that the coach would expect of his team. Same with council. So I'll go in with this mentality, the standard of mine of purse strings, budget, service. What do we need? So that's how I want to do it. So the preferred contractor system is a major expense on us. That is as a rort. I know I'm not going to get their votes. I know that, because they won't want me in there. These major contractors. That's the last thing they'll want. So I hope that answered. I was a bit long-winded again in my answer.
No, all good. No, well done. Look, and I'll just do a quick one on the last one that I was asked to pass over to you before I pass it on to my fellow co-hosts. You're doing well. You're doing well. We're only got about probably about three more questions, including this one. Okay, so you and I whakapapa back to iwi, right? You're Māori, I'm Māori. Our other two Aluwa. Again, I managed to scrape all four. We know that you're against three waters. No problem. Easy done. What about co-governance overall? And what about things like the Tupuna Maunga Authority? And and things like the infamous example I'll use of the guy whose window was smashed. He wanted to put in something cooler in place of that window, and he ended up giving up, because not only was he going to pay out for the RMA and also for the glazier itself, but also he had to do consultation with the local iwi that ended up being something ended up being like a 4-digit figure to engage that. So, what are your thoughts about co-governance and that area?
Okay, we'll start with the TMA, the Maunga Authority. They were set up to serve all of Auckland, regardless of race, creed, or religion. If you're an Aucklander, we are here to serve you, the TMA. They have not done that. They've created an empire. They are very anti-colonial, because they've decided that the trees they will chop down, they are calling them exotics. And that's their way of getting around it. And they have an ideology that is not for Auckland, it's for themselves. So they're a major issue. And they're an example of a co-governance that should work that is not working. Co-governance, to me, is wrong. I disagree with it entirely. I'm all for co-advice, cooperation, working together, and coming up with solutions. But to govern, if it's a position where you're governing the community or a segment of the community, the community should be voting you in. You should not be getting into that position based on DNA. So I do not agree with race-based policies and governance. Three Waters has that. They wanted co-governance. TMA is co-governance. I would like to change it. They're trying to change the Hauraki Golf Forum to be co-governance, and I disagree with it entirely. If it's just a group and their job is to, like a trust or a board, to look after something, they have to be voted on. The council has to be voted on. That's why I also have a problem with Māori wards. I don't think they're fair for the overall community. You should be there on merit, and you should be there voted for the people, by the people. And that's what I firmly believe in. So co-governance is a big no-no for me. There's obviously parts where I have no say and I can't do anything about it because it's in law. But if there is a place where I can fight against it, I will be, because it's just wrong. And, I did the spit test. I've got my DNA back, and I know that I'm 39% Ngāti Rua Nui from Hawara, South Taranaki.
Ah, cool. Very good.
So I finally found, and only this year I found the iwi, and that's all been done via the DNA test. But you'll never ever hear me say I could be, or you'll hear me say it now, but I never pushed the fact that I could be the first Māori mayor. I'm not. I'm a New Zealander and I'm an Aucklander. So I'm a Kiwi. And every immigrant and every race and culture, to me, I'm completely colorblind. I know you've got an accent. I know you look slightly different, but you're an Aucklander, you're a Kiwi, you're a New Zealander, and that's how you'll be treated by me. And that's how I want to be treated. So that's why I'm fully against the co-governance system.
Gorgeous. Absolutely, yeah. Liao, your last question.
Yes, Craig. I want to ask you how we can better safeguard against future potential water and power shortages in our growing city.
The water one is very close to actually being solved, I think. They've got themselves access to more water out of Waikato, which is nice. I find it again a little bit distasteful that they have to pay a giant fee to use water that's all of ours just because it runs through a slightly different bit of dirt than our area. I actually thought as Kiwis they would be saying, yep, come on, we'll help you out. You need water up there, no problem. It all recycles through. So, but no, they see a money-making opportunity and they grab it. So that was a bit of a shame. But anyway, that part's there. And I think they're looking at building some more dams, is what I've heard. I've just got to double check on that for the population increase that is coming. They're estimating that there'll be 1 million more people in Auckland by 2030. So that's a big jump of people. That's a lot of toilets to be flushed, a lot of showers, a lot of cup of tea. Hopefully baths are a thing of the past because they use up way too much water. Well, actually, no, there's an argument there. Some people say they use less than a shower. I guess it depends how many kids you got at home. That's in regards to the water. Power's a major problem now too.
Yeah.
And especially if they want us all to jump in electric cars, which at the moment the infrastructure can't cope with. It's ridiculous. And get me started on climate change. So the electric car system, and they want us. Look, we've got major problems coming with our power. We do have good because we've got the hydro and we've got some wind farms. But I think technology is coming where we'll start to use tidal power. We'll start to use a lot more solar, but the solar is not as green as people think because the solar panels don't last forever. And they're very, very difficult to recycle, just like the batteries out of an electric vehicle. And let's not talk about making the batteries for an electric vehicle, what that's doing to the planet. So, yep, there are big problems that are going to have to be solved. And again, council's going to have to be knocking on the door. One of the projects I'm really pushing hard for, I know it's going to get some pushback from the Greens, is a waste to energy plant. I've been pushing for one for 4 years. I want to lobby government to build one. I think the ideal place is Meremere, and the reason for that is it has all the facilities there. It has road, rail, water, and power lines. They're all there. We build a waste to energy plant. We don't have to build landfills anymore. Well, you still do because you've got the filter that gets buried, but the amount of space required is not anything compared to what a current landfill is. There's people out there who hate waste to energy plants, but I'm not one of them. I think they're great. They're not an incinerator of the old days, They're not a furnace. These things are high tech, and there's no emissions. There's no emissions. We can get rid of our rubbish, and that creates power. So we've got to do it. They're doing it overseas. I think Perth are building one in Aussie. I'm surprised Aussie were a bit slow off the mark, and I think that's because of the Greens over there. They're pretty powerful, and they stopped it. They've stopped a couple being built down South Island, but I think we could get it across the line with the modern technology that's available. They've built a bio waste to energy plant, which is where the food scraps are going to go, but it's not to the level that I'm talking about. And this one will help our buddy there who's all about Pacifica tonight. Hey, mate. Hey, this will be good for you. Is if we built a waste to energy plant we could import the waste from the Pacific Islands, put it through the waste to energy plant. They don't have to bury it anymore, because where is it going over there? Where's the waste going?
Good
Well,
Oh, yeah,
question.
straight into the Pacific.
hey, brothers
Yeah.
and sisters, we'll help you out. We'll take it, put it in a container, and let's get it over here. We'll burn it for you, and we'll turn it into power. So, yeah.
Oh, well done. Well done. Fuiawa, last questions go to you also. Oh, you're on the mute. Oh, there you
Yes. I just wanted to say that, it's been a real pleasure having you, and really enjoyed listening to you tonight. And this one's not going to be so much a Pacifica question as it is a people question.
Okay.
Two things. Are you concerned at all about the election integrity here in regarding the elections? How is I know that it's very difficult for conservatives in this day and age to actually be treated fairly within the media. I'm just wondering if you're only getting a fair shake with those of us here in alternative media as opposed to those who are outside in the mainstream.
Yeah, I do believe that. And I know it could come across as sour grapes. And I'm just upset because I don't have the profile of the others, but I do believe that. And I also speak on behalf of the other candidates, particularly in the local body election, who do not get any coverage. And it's something we spoke of earlier in this chat. um, they don't work fairly. They seem to pick who they want, and they'll promote, and they'll do fluff stories, and they'll make sure they get plenty of coverage if it's in their benefit. And I firmly believe that. They'll deny it, of course. Of course, they'll say, no, we're fair to everyone. We'll only talk to the top raters. Well, okay, you're creating the top rater. That you're doing that by the way you work and the way you promote. So I was pleased, though, in saying that. I was pleased about 2 weeks ago when Newsroom, albeit I think Newsroom are a fairly left-leaning
Very
outlet.
left.
Yep. It was Mark Jennings, one of the co-editors, who actually wrote an article, and he's in the title of it, Craig Lord, the Man Ignored. And I was like, wow, okay, I better read this. And he actually gave the media a bit of a serve for the way they treated me and some of the other candidates. So he was actually giving his own media a serve. And then, of course, on the same day, one of his other editors did a fluff piece on the other two candidates. So I was kind of like, oh, God, do they not even read their own stuff internally? So it was nice that he admitted that, yeah, it's not quite fair and it needs to be looked at. Whether anything will come of it, I do not know. But the same thing happens in Central. That's going to be very interesting to see how that pans out next year when the media start playing around. But definitely in the locals, they've picked on, well, they were picking on 4, sort of 5 with me, and nothing from the others. And some of the others had some good things to say. They have had across the debate. To be fair, there's always a lot of crazies who put their hand up for election, and they've got every right to do so. And they're probably upset with me now by calling them crazies. But if you're an activist or you're doing it for that, you're not doing it for the real role, which is to serve the people. You're just doing it for your own self-serving purpose. So that's a bit different. And the media have to wade through that. I get that. They've got to scroll through the names and work them out. So, but when it comes to the people at the top end, what I consider the top end, yeah, they pick and choose what they want to do, and it is a little distasteful, and it's a heck of a fight. But I like a fight, and one of the 2 things I'm counting on, for if I talk personally now for this election, is I'm counting on the Kiwi attitude of backing the underdog, the Kiwi battler. I'm hoping that lots of Kiwis will look at me and go, yeah, he's us. He's the Kiwi battler, and we've got his back. We want this guy because he represents us. And the other thing I'm hoping for is the social media side. The spread that you can get out of social media is very powerful. The mainstream media use it to try and promote themselves, but they like to ignore it. They don't want to consider it a powerful tool because it'll nullify themselves. So they don't believe that you can do anything powerful with social media. I do. And I think there's a big groundswell out there. And I think in coming elections, a lot of candidates from general and local body will realise, because not many really have been pushing it like I have on social media, and they'll realise that, hey, this is actually a powerful tool. And if I am successful, fingers crossed, I'm feeling confident, then I can say social media. And that'll suddenly, all the other candidates in the future will go, ooh, hang on, he was onto something here. So, yeah, lead the way. Woohoo!
Oi, oi, no, well done, well done. Yeah, well, it looks like you've got quite a few people in the audience section who are going to vote for you. I'll be honest. I'll be transparent and honest and open. Yep, I'll be voting for you as well. I think that exactly what you say. I think that you are. I think that you are a man of integrity, and I love your ideas. Your ideas are great, and things like, for example, that the underguard monorail style. It's not a monorail, but it's the closest thing I can come to it. I happen to know of that idea, and I've even looked at the figures. The figures back it. It's insane to me that Auckland Transport and Auckland Council have never looked at it properly. Just shocking. So,
Well,
look,
just very quickly, in 2019, when I brought it up for the first time, it was the same time that they were presenting new options to the government for the light rail idea and other transport options. And Phil Twyford, who was the transport minister at the time, said, "Oh no, we haven't even looked at anything above ground." So that's the mentality, mate. They don't even bother.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Right.
Phil who?
Liao Fuabai, a couple of points. Any last points there for our man?
Well, Craig, thank you so much for just answering just honestly. And, there will be so many people who are going to support you in this walk towards you becoming mayor. And, I just want to honor you tonight. I really have appreciated your heartfelt concern for people. It's very refreshing, and it's really important because, we've said this over the last, few years, is that the word minister is to serve, and that's how we've always seen what a minister is. And all the ministers that are in Parliament, they have been very self-serving. So we are just really grateful for you being able to be available, but also to have really good answers to some of them pretty difficult questions. So thank you, and all the best for you.
Thank you. Very humbling. Thank you.
Fuabai.
Yeah. I was just going to say that just following up on what Leal said, that in regards to all the Pacifica questions that I brought up, it's really good to hear someone who actually is concerned enough to actually consider the question and try to answer it in the best way possible. I think that one of the problems that we have that we face here in South Auckland, I think, is that it's like a lot of the issues may not be mainstream issues, and if they're not mainstream issues, then they get lost in the And so some of the concerns that I voiced tonight actually were things that maybe not a lot of people are actually concerned about. But it's good to hear that you actually have a heart and a desire to, and I think that's all that people in the Pacific community want to know, is that they're dealing with someone who's honest and straightforward, and and is caring enough to actually take on whatever they are concerned about. So kudos to you and all the best. Yeah, once again, you do have my vote as well. I unfortunately can't speak on behalf of the entire Pacifica community. Uh, as you know, Pacific community tends to vote like as one group. So I'm pretty sure that if Fesso is doing his best to try to lock that down, unfortunately, we're looking forward to the day that our people will be more open-minded and actually vote, along the lines of knowing people as opposed to just voting as a group.
Yeah, look,
Awesome.
I appreciate that, guys. I mean, we are here to serve. That's why you put your hand up. The council's role is to serve the people. It's their job, and I will be instilling that into every single person who works in every department of council, that if you don't really want to serve the people, you shouldn't be here. This is not for you, and that's what the role is. And I'm excited by it. I genuinely am excited by the idea of getting in there and getting my hands dirty and trying to make it what it could be, because Auckland is a really cool place. It's a good city. There's a lot of good here, and there are issues, but they're solvable. And I'm excited about the idea of making the bad things good and the good things even better. And that's it's got me excited about doing it. So I'm willing to put my hand up and give it a shot. So hopefully we get enough votes across the line.
Amen.
Awesome. So thank you to all of our audience. Thank you so much for being in here and sending all your kōrero through, all your talanoa through. It's really, really great. We will be making sure that we split this into bite-sized pieces as well, because we think it is quite important for you to hear what this man has to say. We thank you so much for joining us. We thank you for everything you guys have been doing out there as well. In the meantime, we'll hear from Liao. If we can ask you to finish us off in the appropriate way that we do, and then we'll say good night.
Sure. Lord, we just want to thank you tonight for Lord, for truth. Lord, we thank you that we can bring our questions and just heartfelt questions from both our audience and ourselves towards our potential mayor. Lord, you know what's going to happen in October, and we just ask you for your favor and blessing over Craig as he continues to pursue what his role and responsibilities will be as mayor. We just ask you, God, to bless him and all the others who are wanting to pursue truth, who are standing throughout this country in different councils, Lord, who want to speak truth and who want to serve the people. So we just pray these things, and we thank you for blessing us and being with us tonight. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. God bless you guys. God bless you all. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye.